We're pleased this week to welcome three different faces to our line panel. First, from the Albuquerque Journal, science and water writer John Fleck. From the new online venture, the New Mexico Mercury, and that's newmexicomercury.com as well, V.B. Price, he's been here before, and self-described executive cowgirl from the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association, Karen Cowan. Now, part of the reason, guys, we're so anxious to bring you in for this show is to talk about a lot of issues that are going on in our state right now. But let's start with attitudes towards the environment. Karen, you represent a group of folks who have a unique take on the environment. Cattle growers, farmers down south. What's been your sense over the past few years about the environment and changes in attitudes from the folks that you represent?
Drought is the overriding concern, and it affects everything in the environment, from wildlife to our livestock to our families. And we have a deep appreciation of the environment, although our grandfathers might not have couched it that way. Many of our ranches are in fourth and fifth generations. We've got ranches now with 4 generations living on the ranch. And if you don't take care of the land or your environment, it's not going to be there to pass on to those great grandkids or grandkids that you're watching grow up on the ranch.
Is there concern, are you hearing from your membership and others about what's going on in the environment and their livelihoods is what you're talking about? You're talking about livelihoods here. What's been the attitudinal change on these things?
I don't know that there's been an attitudinal change. Yeah. We've changed our language. Okay. I watched my dad in the 90s with the drought that was going on at that point in time in Arizona. It's something that we live and breathe all the time. And we didn't come to this land knowing everything about it or how to do everything on it. It's like the practice of medicine or the practice of law. Sure. You're continually learning new techniques and new ways to handle things. And people are anxious to do that. I mean, they care about the land, they care about their future investment in that land, and they do everything they can to try to be sure they're doing the right thing.
Makes sense. VB, good to see you, by the way. And same question about attitudinal change. And it's interesting to be able to ask you this question, sir, because you've been tracking this very thing for a lot of years now. How folks perceive our environment, how we judge our environment, how we protect our environment or not. So what's your sense of the changes over the years that you've seen about environment and our attitude here?
Well, I think since Earth Day, a long time ago, there has been a considerable popular awareness of environmental issues. And I think there's been a great personal awareness too. But I think the forces of opposition particularly to environmental regulation and to uncovering and revealing certain practices that lead to incredible water pollution and other things, have been rising to the fore. They're still incredibly active. I mean, and they go kind of hand in hand with climate change deniers and other people. So I think while we have a kind of wonderful human uprising of awareness, we still have many forces of suppression of that awareness.
Would that count industry in your view? Would
Yes.
that count?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
It would count the people who fundamentally, I think, look at profit margin before public health. Water, as you know, in New Mexico is a publicly owned substance, and so contaminating it for any reason is an affront to the public will and to public health.
Sure.
And so if you're making money by doing that because you don't have to pay for it, then you're not in a good place here.
It's interesting you mentioned that, and I want to swing over to John Fleck. That tension VB's describing is part and parcel of our environment here. We have industry that has the need and the right to do what it needs to do here and do it responsibly using our environment. But then the public has the right and the want and the desire to have an environment that's clean and there for our grandchildren. As you report this tension, what's come out in your view about attitudes? When you get letters, have things changed over the years, letters to the Journal?
There has been, in the 20 plus years that I've been reporting on these issues in Albuquerque and in New Mexico, I think a growing awareness on the part of the members of the community, the urban community, about the environmental values in our midst, and especially about the Rio Grande and the Bosque, and the notion of the value of a flowing river, that public attitude and awareness hasn't necessarily been matched by the sort of institutional decision-making framework. So we're in the midst of a lot of decisions, and I know we're going to talk about some of these issues later, involving flows in the river this year and during a drought year, and you don't have a real public involvement seat at the table as those decisions are being made. But I want to get back to something that Karen talked about, because in fact in this community, the agricultural piece of our economy, it's not in the Middle Valley, it's not a huge piece of our economy, but the farmland and the spreading water across the farmland and growing crops, when you talk to those farmers who are doing that, they view it as a very important environmental value that they are contributing to the sort of environmental well-being of this community. I think it's really important to think through how we value that piece of our environment, and you see this right now in the public decision-making process around the Price's Dairy Wildlife Refuge, which the federal government is setting money aside, which is going to in part be kept, we've decided we want to preserve this in our midst, and partly we want to preserve it as a part of our agriculture and a part of agricultural heritage. And that becomes, in the hundreds of years that people have been farming in this valley, that has become part of our natural world and part of the thing that we've decided we want to keep and preserve. And so how we balance those values and encourage the preservation of that and the contribution that makes to the well-being of all of us, even if we don't live on farms ourselves, is really important.
And another point on that too that's interesting, Karen, I want to ask you this bit. That bubbles up through policy decisions as well. And if you peel back a layer, that bubbles up from what they're hearing from their constituents, what their needs are, and that comes from push, from their customers, so to speak, to be able to keep prices low or competitive. You see what I mean? So it's a very difficult thing from a policy point of view to balance all those things. So your take on the attitudinal changes in policy for policymakers. Have policymakers changed in your view over the years?
Absolutely, and that was abundantly clear in this last legislature. There were several Senate committees and House committees as well that we sat in, that a question that was asked is, how do we protect agriculture? How do we make sure that we retain this? Senator Michael Sanchez is become very aware, and he might have always been, but he hadn't expressed it before. So we're finding urban legislators, or what we perceive to be urban legislators, are very sensitive to what's going on and the need to balance needs and uses so that everybody can survive.
Sure. Phoebe, would you pick up on that as well? I find that very interesting that locally based, Albuquerque-based legislators in other urban areas are hearing this a little bit more. Would you concur with that as well?
Yeah, I would, and it's about time they did.
Okay.
Because there has always been an urban-rural war in New Mexico. Because Albuquerque particularly, sucks up jobs, money, all kinds of things. And there's been a very unfortunate, I think, and now possibly dwindling view from a lot of urban environmentalists that agriculturalists and ranchers have not been taking a good care of the land, which I think is completely wrong. I've always thought that. If you want to look about how, if you want an example about how to manage land and how to manage water, look to them, for God's sakes, because they've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years. But that's part of an opposition system that I'm beginning to see. If I can rattle on just a minute longer. In this last election, one senatorial candidate accused the other one of being supported by a radical energy industry with its extremist views. Now, that radical energy industry could only have been solar and wind.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
So suddenly, to oppose oil and gas and more lucrative and powerful lobbying interests turns you into a radical and an extremist. That's the kind of underlying anger and contentiousness that I think exists still, and may even be on the rise.
Interesting. John, our state is so varied this way. If you think about the attitude in northern New Mexico, even finite to Santa Fe versus Cruces, Maljamar, pick wherever you want, there's going to be a huge gulf in attitude about these things,
Yes.
it seems to me. Could we be doing better to be our brother's keeper here in our state about the environment? Are both sides equally as wrong here sometimes?
I think that we are, and again, I know we're going to talk about water, but I think the water issues that we face are going to force us to do that. The need to collaborate and to cooperate to deal with a scarce resource. There's the old cliche often attributed to Mark Twain, which he didn't say, that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over. And first of all, Twain didn't say that, but more importantly, when push comes to shove, it becomes the tool for cooperation and collaboration around these issues. And we're starting to see this in some of the places where the water tensions are the greatest, that different interests, urban and rural interests, are finding that the best way to meet mutual desires and needs is to collaborate and cooperate. And so I think that I have been accused of being overly optimistic and being a bit of a Pollyanna on this point, but I think the seeds of collaboration and cooperation and problem solving in fact are there.
Interesting. Would you also, let me ask you to touch on something Karen touched on as well. You're not a political reporter, certainly by trade, but it's a part of your world seeing how policy decisions are made as
Right.
well. Does that fit what you just described, that people are going to have to come to the table as policymakers because it's going to be that bad?
Yes.
From drought, as Karen mentioned, and other things. Nobody has a choice anymore, it seems to me, right? Would you see that as well?
I believe that's the case. I mean,
Yeah.
there are sort of there's entrenched tribal politics in all sort of exchanges that can make these things more difficult.
Sure.
That people take on, people's self-identities come from their political identities, and that forces them into a cubbyhole. But in the problem solving that I have seen go on, I have seen people in dealing with these issues move out of those cubby holes in order to grapple with the problems when they get real.
Interesting right there. In a moment, changing the built environment to address climate change.